Welcome, everybody, to the Keto Edge Summit, where we are dispelling the myths, helping you overcome the hurdles, and empowering you to improve your brain and your body and get an edge in life through the ketogenic lifestyle. Today's topic is diabetes and the ketogenic diet. It's a controversial topic because a lot of people with diabetes are concerned about ketones. So I brought in a great friend of mine and a world-renowned expert in diabetes. This is Dr. Brian Mole. And Dr. Mole is the founder and medical director of Sweet Life Diabetes Health Centers and serves clients worldwide as the diabetes coach. He's a master licensed diabetes educator and was one of the first doctors to be certified to practice functional medicine by the prestigious Institute for Functional Medicine. We've had a lot of guests that have been certified through them, so Dr. Mole is one of the first. Since 1998, Dr. Mole has been helping people across North America to optimize their health and metabolism, control blood sugar, and reverse type 2 diabetes using a natural, personalized lifestyle approach. He's the man when it comes to diabetes, and we're going to dive into this topic deep. Dr. Mole, so great to have you on. I know you're going to provide tremendous content for our audience today.
Well, thanks, Doc. It's great to be here, and I always love talking to you. I always have. We have some great conversations, and this is a really important topic, so excited to dive in.
Yeah, absolutely. Huge. And so tell us your story. I mean, you've been doing this for a while, and obviously you have this specialty in diabetes. What really got you going? Why did you become a doctor to begin with, and why did you choose to specialize in diabetes?
Yeah, I think there was always an interest in health and fitness for me. You know, I kind of came up through fitness, athletic training, exercise physiology, and then knew that I wanted to do more. I didn't want to be a researcher per se, and I wanted to work with people. So through school, I kind of decided that I wanted to take it to the next level. Got into practice, and similar to you, I think, realized that I wanted to incorporate nutrition and other lifestyle factors into, a holistic care model, and started doing that and had a great time with it. I did a lot of workshops on all sorts of topics with my patients, but just really gravitated towards diabetes. I think for me, it was an area that we saw a lot of success with early on. Had some people come in with diabetes and just started researching it and working with them, and had some success, and then realized that they were so frustrated. Just these first few people that I dealt with, excuse me, and then as I started to look around, I realized, wow, this is a major area of really ineptitude in medicine. There's the mainstream conventional approach to diabetes is so far away from what we do in natural healthcare and functional medicine. And I really thought that the two could be blended in some way. I think conventional management is still good. It's still important, but it leaves a lot still on the table that isn't being addressed. And I found that the patients were dying for this, literally dying for this information. That coupled with the fact that it's become an absolute menace to our society and our culture, not only here in the US, but around the globe, that there really needs to be a solution. And I felt like there really is a solution. People just don't know about it. People just aren't being taught and practicing it. So to me, it was just that fire, to spread that message to as many people as we possibly could. So I started doing that in my practice. It wasn't long before I realized the limitations of teaching people one-on-one in a closed office with me and their family. And then started trying to branch out, once the internet boom happened. Then I sort of gravitated towards that and started teaching online as much as I could. And eventually my practice kind of transformed to be global, which has been pretty awesome. So I think it was a combination of, that personal passion for health and desire to reach and help more people, with what I believe really is knowledge and information that can save lives that people just weren't learning through their conventional medical system.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, we look at diabetes in general, and we've got a huge rise in pre-diabetes, type 1 diabetes, and type 2 diabetes. And so what do you think the reason, I mean, can you kind of define those three conditions? Because there's a lot of confusion on what each one of those is, how somebody develops it. And what are some of the major causative factors and why we have this huge rise in these conditions?
Yeah, diabetes has been described in texts and literature for thousands of years, but really with more recent diagnosis ability, I think we're catching more, and it's also blown up, unfortunately. So it's two things. Most of the early cases of diabetes described were probably type 1. They didn't have that terminology at the time, but were probably type 1. It was, major amounts of sugar coming through the urine. In fact, sometimes they would even taste the urine to diagnose diabetes at the time. So most likely those were cases of type 1. It was considered like a wasting disease. So these people were losing weight. And in fact, they thought that, the flesh was sort of turning into urine. And those were kind of the ways it was originally described, but a fairly rare disease, considering all the other things that people were dying with, infectious disease and so forth. So it was really, at the turn of the last century, in the early 1900s, that we saw cases start to grow. And again, some of that may be related to better diagnosis. But really, throughout this last century, diabetes has absolutely exploded. And, I think a lot of it has to do, I call it the perfect storm for metabolic disaster. It's the diet changes that happened, particularly in the 70s, when, we kind of changed from what people were normally eating to a more highly processed diet, high in sugar. We cut out fat and sort of went to this bread and grain diet that is recommended still by the American Diabetes Association, American Heart Association, which is just tragic, I think. Cutting out fat and more packaged foods, more and more processed foods, more fake foods, and then coupled with high stress. And it's not just mental emotional stress, although that is a big issue. We also look at physiological stressors like gut issues and hormone imbalance and toxins from the plastics and environmental pollutants and pesticides and cosmetics, phthalates, and so forth. All of this stuff, these are endocrine disruptors which block proper hormone function. So all those stressors, sleep is become a big issue. A lot of people are not sleeping properly, which adds more stress to the system. And then we've become more sedentary. It's even people who exercise, they'll sit at their desk all day long and then they'll go out and get an hour of exercise. And then they'll come back and they'll sit on the couch and watch TV and go to sleep. So we're not active like we used to be. We're not out, picking and growing our own food or chasing down and hunting and so forth. So I think all of these factors, it's not just the diet, although that's a big part of it, but all of these factors create this perfect storm for metabolic disease. And that's diabetes. It's many forms of cancer, heart and cardiovascular disease, and even things like brain disease, dementia, and Alzheimer's.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we think about neuroinflammatory conditions, which are also on the rise, like Alzheimer's disease, for example, and they're calling Alzheimer's type 3 diabetes, so a whole new classification. So type 1 is, we know that that's autoimmune based. Type 2, there's more research coming out about how that can be autoimmune, but it's typically adult onset. And you've been saying, hey, now we're seeing it in younger and younger people.
Yeah, and certainly inflammatory. There's certainly an inflammatory connection.
Right. There's an inflammatory connection there. And then now they're saying type 3 diabetes is kind of this diabetes or insulin resistance in the brain. Can you explain more about that?
Yeah, so it's interesting, and this is an emerging field of study. There was a doctor by the name of Susan de Lamond who did some original description of Alzheimer's, dementia, and it's not just Alzheimer's. Actually, it's various forms of dementia. Lewy body dementia, for example, has also been associated with diabetes and insulin resistance and high blood sugar. So dementia, Alzheimer's disease is obviously the most common form of adult dementia. But there's a connection there somehow with blood sugar and insulin signaling, metabolic disease or metabolic dysfunction. There are many cases that have been described where there's insulin resistance, but not even high blood sugar and Alzheimer's disease or dementia. And so many people think that this is even more related to insulin potentially than it is to just the sugar effect. Although there was a study published just last week, recently here, that showed, it was an NIH study that showed that people with Alzheimer's and dementia have a problem processing glucose in their brain cells. So here's another connection with high blood sugar, hyperglycemia, and dementia. So one thing we know for sure is there's a very strong correlation. Yeah. So a high percentage of people with diabetes will develop dementia and Alzheimer's disease, and a very high percentage of people with Alzheimer's disease have high blood sugar and or insulin resistance, like 80%. So it's there's a very, very strong correlation there. And I think we're still learning about maybe some of the mechanisms of how that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, when they're not able to really produce cellular energy in their brain through glucose or through sugar because of this insulin resistance, then those brain cells are literally starving because they're not able to convert into basically using an alternative fuel like ketones.
That's right.
So they're not able to produce enough energy, so there's more oxidative stress, and they start to become damaged and destroyed. And the blood-brain barrier opens up too, right? It just
that's right.
Yeah, it opens up because it's starving. The brain cells are starving, so now you get more toxins that may be in the body. Like I know aluminum is associated with Alzheimer's, and so start to see that, and kind of this whole vicious cycle. And so
really, you get the leaky brain syndrome, kind of like we talk about leaky gut. You get leaky brain, where you get hyperpermeability of the blood-brain barrier, which that's a disaster. I mean, you're really asking for major issues there.
Absolutely, and it's kind of this new concept too. The 21st century, that cutting edge doctors like yourself, you're looking at the gut, you're looking at environmental toxins when it comes to diabetes, when, most conventional doctors are just thinking, hey, do, a low glycemic diet, which isn't important, but they're really not looking at all the other factors like gut health, environmental toxins, sleep quality, and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think these barrier systems are really important. There's three main barrier systems. We have our skin, then the gut lining, and the blood-brain barrier. Those are really our three main walls, if you will, to protect important areas. And inflammation destroys them. Chronic systemic inflammation tears those walls apart, and that in turn leads to, I think, much of the disease that we're seeing today. So, a lot of people understand that these are somehow connected to inflammation, but maybe not exactly how. And I think that's one of the main mechanisms, is that inflammatory process, there's collateral damage, and some of that damage is breaking down these barriers. And when those barriers get broken down, now it's like, the walls are coming down to the fortress, and the enemies are getting through, so, and that can happen in the brain, and we see all sorts of brain issues. It can happen in the gut, which then gets into our systemic blood flow and can lead to problems anywhere, particularly vascular issues. And then, the skin oftentimes. And the skin's interesting because you can use the skin as a diagnostic tool. When you see inflammatory issues, rashes, and pigmentation problems, and just a lackluster appearance of the skin, that those other barrier systems are probably damaged as well.
Oh yeah, totally. Absolutely. And so ultimately, when we're looking at lifestyle, we know sugar plays a huge role with all of this, sugar and starches and whatnot. And so most people in our, westernized countries, we're addicted to sugar and starch. And so what are some of the strategies that you use with people that are coming in to see you to help basically break those addictions and start transitioning their diet?
Yeah, I think that's really important. And in the diabetes community, we see this all the time. So November is Diabetes Awareness Month, and Diabetes Day was recently. And I'm reminded of this every year because these diabetes organizations, for whatever reason, they love to put pictures of people with cupcakes and cake and cookies up on Diabetes Awareness Day. And for some reason, they want to make people aware that diabetes is not caused by eating too much sugar. That's like their main push. They're very into, like, they don't want to guilt people, which I understand. But I think unfortunately, it's not really a very good message, because I don't think those things are good for anybody, and particularly if you can't process glucose properly. So I think the mindset is the most important thing. And I like to get that really clear with people. If somebody has celiac disease and they're gluten intolerant, how much gluten should they be eating? Really none, right? I mean, preferably as little as possible, as little as they can get away with. Mm-hmm. So another name for diabetes or even prediabetes is glucose intolerance. That's what it's called medically. In fact, we diagnose it with something called a glucose tolerance test. So if you don't do well in that, you're intolerant to glucose. So if you're glucose intolerant, how much glucose should you be eating? And again, the answer for me is as little as possible. You really don't, if you don't process it well, it becomes a toxin to your body. So why do we want to purposely go out and eat these things? It's like taking somebody who, is a recovering alcoholic and saying, hey, it's National, Alcoholic Recovery Day. And you get a picture of somebody, drinking a beer saying, great, cheers. It doesn't make any sense to me at all. So I think that the mindset is important. You have to realize, number one, that those foods, unfortunately for you at this point, if you've been diagnosed with prediabetes or you have high blood sugar, or even really if it's in your family, those foods are largely toxic. So we need to avoid them as much as possible. The interesting thing about glucose is the liver can make glucose out of fat and amino acids. So we really don't need to consume it at all. Although there's no evidence that small amounts of glucose, are really all that damaging. I mean, you can argue where that line is, and that becomes, I think, very individualized. Mm-hmm. But, small amounts of glucose are probably fine for most people, but we want to limit it as much as possible, right. And that's, it's the mindset, and realize that you don't need it and you can certainly do without it. So I think that's an important starting point. And also realizing that it is addictive. As you mentioned, sugar is highly addictive. It acts on the addiction centers of the brain, the nucleus accumbens it's called, to stimulate the pleasure reward system. So when we eat sugar, we feel good in the short term. We get sort of that quick high, but then when we come off of that high, it creates in the brain and in the metabolic system a cascade of negative reactions, a negative domino effect. So our brain, once that reward button isn't being tapped anymore, we want to go tap it again. So we want more sugar or carbohydrates or God forbid something else, where we get addicted to something else. And in the metabolism, the physiology of the body, we get this blood sugar roller coaster, where we eat sugar and we get an insulin surge. Most people become insulin resistant very quickly. And their blood sugar drops or eventually stays high, and they can't utilize that sugar, so they crave more and want more, and it just becomes this never-ending cycle. Most people are aware of this. If you eat a breakfast with a lot of carbohydrates and or sugar, a glass of orange juice and a donut, or make it a little healthier, a bowl of oatmeal, let's say some fresh squeezed juice, you're going to feel hungry typically an hour after that meal. And you're going to typically feel rotten. Your energy is going to plummet. You're going to feel awful. And this is this is the prescribed diet for people with diabetes. I had a patient of mine, a client of mine, take a picture of his hospital meal. He went into the hospital for an unrelated issue, and it's marked that he's a diabetic on his chart. And he showed a picture of his meal. I kind of added up the carbohydrates in his meal. It was like 70 to 80 grams of carbohydrates on one plate, and then of course they inject him with insulin. He's on insulin the entire time he's in the hospital, even though he wasn't on insulin. And that's how they manage diabetes. It's absolutely insane. So, the first thing is realizing that sugar is not necessary, and it's very addictive. And if you have blood sugar problems, high blood sugar, diabetes in the family, obesity, metabolic issues, low thyroid function, any of these things, you really don't want to be consuming sugar. Really we want to move away from that as much as possible. So I think those are a couple of things to think about, but I think it all starts with mindset. People get this idea that they're depriving themselves if they don't eat the traditional ice cream or those sweets or those cookies in the holidays. They don't indulge in these things. And I think we really need to make a mental shift away from those things.
Yeah, totally. And the reality is that people start to realize, they say the illiterate of the 21st century are not those who can't read and write. All of us can read and write in westernized countries today's day and age, but they're those who can't learn something, realize it's not serving them, choose to unlearn it, realize, hey, I'm not going to follow that anymore, and then relearn new strategies that are going to help them. And so many of us have been conditioned. I know you and I'm sure, I know I grew up, it was Cheerios or oatmeal in the morning with banana and with orange juice. And so all of that just spiked my blood sugar. For lunch, it was peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and it was pretzels because we were health conscious. So we didn't go with Frito-Lays, we went with pretzels, which are all high carb. And then for dinner, it was usually like pasta and vegetables, spaghetti, stuff like that, which is all super high carb. And so my blood sugar was all over the place. And another big myth too is that people think that, in a sense, only overweight people get diabetes. And in my family, my grandfather had diabetes, and he was really, really thin, right? He was lean. And I know for myself, I'm real sensitive to sugar and insulin. And so if I overconsume, I definitely would develop diabetes. And, kind of like what you were talking about as well with sugar cravings, for me, for today's day and age, I think I've evolved, my taste buds have evolved now, but it really took many years of conditioning, because as I was kind of going through this journey, if I did indulge in something that was higher in carbs or sugar, the whole next day I was craving sugar. It would literally take me 2 or 3 days to stop having the sugar cravings. Now it's I feel so bad because I've been doing this so long. When I do eat it later that day or the next day, I feel so bad that, and I understand cause and effect, that the pain associated with how I feel is associated with those foods. And so I no longer have the cravings. I just don't want to feel bad like that.
Yeah, there's something that I noticed being in professional conferences and things, going through my functional medicine certification certainly, but we see this in professional circles for people who do this type of work. And I call it the big shift or the big leap, where at some point you and I and a lot of our colleagues made this decision or trained our bodies long enough to where we didn't have to make a mental decision every time somebody put a cookie in front of our face. And I see with my clients, many of them haven't made that shift yet. And you end up torturing yourself because, if you have to make a decision every time someone offers you a cookie or every time you walk past an ice cream store, then, you're ultimately going to cave sometimes because you're going to have weak moments. You're not going to be mentally, strong all the time. So if you can make that decision once and then you don't have to make it every time somebody presents that to you, I think it's a much better way to go. That doesn't mean it's easy to do that. And yes, you might slip back on that decision occasionally, but I like that mindset better. So instead of sort of saying, well, we'll see every time I'm going to a Christmas party, well, maybe I'll have some cookies, we'll see, it's no, make that decision ahead of time and decide what you're going to do. And then you don't have to torture yourself with that decision later. I call certain foods no-brainer foods. And I like this because most people have at least one or two foods that they used to eat that they no longer eat, that they gave up for health reasons or whatever. Soda is a good example for a lot of people. So many people at one point in their life drank soda. And, most people I would think listening to this probably don't drink soda. And, most of my new clients who come in have given that up long ago. And, if they were at a party or a dinner and someone offered them a soda, they would just say, no, thank you. And it would have no emotional power over them whatsoever. Mm-hmm. So that food has become sort of a no-brainer food. They don't have to think about it. They don't have to make a decision about it. It's just an automatic response. And so what I try to encourage my clients to do is choose some other foods that do have some power over them and try to shift them over to that no-brainer column. Maybe one food at a time, especially if these are really powerful addictions and cravings. So, maybe it is bagels in the morning or something like that for somebody still, or it's the occasional cookie or whatever. And if you really do want to eliminate that from your diet, of course you can, and you're great at this, Doc, but there's lots of ways to make these foods in healthier, low carb ketogenic ways. But if you want to get rid of the sugar sweetened versions of these, shift them over to the no-brainer column and make that decision that, you're just not going to ever have that anymore. And, you don't have to, maybe you mourn it for a day or whatever, but you don't have to, make it a big deal. You just shift it over, find healthier versions of it or healthier options. And then every time it comes up, you just say, no, thank you. And eventually, doing that over and over again, it'll lose its power over you. And then you can try that with other foods. So I found that strategy works pretty well, is attacking sort of one food at a time, picking the ones that have the most power over you, and trying to shift those over to that no-brainer food column like you probably have with soda or some other things.
Yeah, Brian, I love that strategy. And I'm also a big fan of just linking cause and effect. So when you see that no-brainer food, like you're saying, think about whatever your pain point is, whether it's just not liking the way you look because you're overweight, it's not wanting to be on medications, it's having chronic pain in your body, it's having acne, it's eczema, whatever it is, link that food to that pain point. And, you're going to be driven by either pursuit of pleasure, especially with food, or a fear of pain. And so if you can link that pain, your pain point, to that food, then that fear of pain saying, hey, you know what? I really don't want to experience worsening conditions. So that's going to override the desire to have pleasure from that food. Now, the good thing is, like you said, there are so many great recipes these days. I mean, if you tried to make this sort of dietary shift back in the 90s or even the early 2000s, it was hard to find all these alternative recipes online and products you could buy like on Amazon and all these different, Whole Foods and different retailers. But nowadays, there's so many things out there that are great replacements. You can literally almost find every single food, every single recipe that you've always loved, you could find a sugar-free alternative that's using healthy ingredients, and start really putting those into your regular rotation. That will really help. And a big thing, obviously, we're talking about the ketogenic diet in this summit, and ketosis is so huge for getting rid of sugar cravings, because as your body starts to adapt to utilizing these ketones, those cravings really go away. You really just don't notice the same hunger, the same craving effect. Your energy stays high, your brain functions better, you have less inflammation in your body, you get all these extraordinary benefits. And I know a lot of people out there with diabetes that may be listening to this are thinking, but I thought ketones were bad for diabetes. I thought that was like a disease condition. And so, Dr. Brian, can you talk about what ketoacidosis is, this disease condition, versus nutritional ketosis?
Yeah, that's great. And there is some confusion there, particularly with mainstream conventional physicians. And as there's more and more data coming out about nutritional ketosis, I'm hoping this really starts to fade a little bit, but we still see it. And as soon as I think we're kind of past it, I have a client who their doctor scares them to death because they tell them that's the worst thing you can do. No, don't do that.
Right.
But there is a huge difference, obviously. So nutritional ketosis, as most people watching this probably have learned, is about eating a diet low enough in carbs so that you really burn fat as your primary fuel source, and you produce ketones when you do that, when you break down fat. And those ketones can be a great alternative fuel source for the brain and other body tissues. Now, ketoacidosis is a disease condition that people with very high blood sugar, typically we see this in type 1 or uncontrolled type 2 diabetes, can find themselves in. There's a big difference. Typically, you're going to see very high ketone levels. People who find themselves in ketoacidosis have two things. One is high levels of ketosis, and you're talking about very high levels of ketosis because typically they either don't make insulin at all, or they've become so insulin resistant that they just cannot control their blood sugar at all. They're not utilizing glucose, so they're burning massive amounts of fat, and that's producing very, very high levels of ketones. But you're talking about, way out of the nutritional, ketosis ranges. You're talking about really high levels of ketones.
Yeah, it's like 20 millimoles.
Exactly, yeah, like 20 millimoles.
Nutritional
exactly.
Ketosis is like 1 to up to maybe 5 or 6. Really hard to get on that.
Yeah, so big difference there. The other thing that happens is actually the ketosis part of it isn't really all that dangerous, but what happens is then the body gets very dehydrated, and all those ketones make the body acidic, especially with the dehydration. So that's where the acidosis comes in, and that's the dangerous part, is when the body becomes overly acidic, and then the organs actually can start shutting down. So when people go through ketoacidosis, they start feeling really, really bad, very lethargic, and this is like way past any mild symptoms that you might have going through the early stages of nutritional ketosis. Then they usually start throwing up, and they go downhill very quickly. They need to be hydrated, and usually that's through IV, because they can't even keep water down at that point. So it is a very serious condition. It's rare in people who have controlled blood sugars, so we don't see it as much anymore. And it's usually in people who, we'll see their blood sugars are like in the 400 or 500 range. They're super high blood sugar, and usually they don't make insulin, or they're so insulin resistant that again, number one, their blood sugar is very high, and number two, they're basically just not able to use whatever insulin they have on board. So it's a rare condition. We're not seeing it much anymore. Totally different. If you have sort of mild elevated blood sugar, like you're in a pre-diabetic range, or even, a blood sugar less than 150 fasting, you're not going to go into ketoacidosis unless, I've seen one case where somebody went into ketoacidosis with, without super high blood sugars, but they were already sick. They were dealing with an illness. They were already really dehydrated, and basically they lost control of their blood sugar very quickly. But that's not the population probably that's listening to this. And even if you have diabetes, if you're controlling your blood sugar, there's no risk of going into ketoacidosis. And you can use nutritional ketosis as a great strategy to improve insulin sensitivity and improve your blood sugar.
Yeah, and from what I understand, ketoacidosis only occurs when that individual is not able to produce any insulin. And
right.
They have really high blood sugar because they can't have insulin, takes the sugar out of the bloodstream. And they're producing ketones because ketones are produced when insulin goes low. So they have
right.
a combination of real high blood sugar and ketones. And we also know that insulin is necessary to retain sodium. And so
right. Exactly.
That's why they get dehydrated, because now they're excreting all the sodium. They can't maintain any water in their systems. They get really, really dehydrated. So the main issue is they're just not able to produce insulin, whereas, just about everybody that's listening is able to produce some, or if they're not, they're probably on some sort of a, insulin pump
right.
or insulin inducing medication of some type that gets some insulin in their system. So it's really like totally uncontrolled, almost neglecting.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I see a lot of diabetic patients also that are on cholesterol medications, because we know when you're insulin resistant, high insulin is going to basically cause your body to produce a lot more cholesterol. And so they go into their conventional doctor, cholesterol's high, they're going to be put on typical cholesterol lowering medication, a statin. And so how do statins affect our blood sugar and our mitochondrial health?
Well, there's a strong correlation. And so oftentimes we see people who have blood sugar issues are insulin resistant, and they're not burning fat very effectively. So we see triglycerides go up, and those elevated free fatty acids in the blood drive those production of VLDL and LDL cholesterol particles, which end up driving cholesterol up. And unfortunately, the bad cholesterol, it's usually the small, dense particles, and the ones that have been associated with atherosclerosis and cardiovascular disease. So that usually comes from, again, an inability to burn fat effectively, which comes from high insulin levels and insulin resistance in somebody with diabetes or blood sugar problems. As you mentioned, it's standard therapy now to recommend a statin medication for anyone with diagnosed diabetes, whether they have cholesterol problems or not, which to me is almost crazy, because statins have been associated with causing hyperglycemia and diabetes. Not only that, statins can deplete coenzyme Q10 and vitamin B12 and other important nutrients that are important for nerve health.
Yeah.
And cholesterol is important for nerve health. The nerves are sheathed in what's called a myelin sheath, which is made up of fat, and that fat is really important to protect the nerve. So when we see cholesterol being lowered too much, which is the case in a lot of the clients that I see, male clients will see it'll really affect their testosterone levels, which can then again have a negative impact on blood sugar.
Yeah.
We see it affects in memory and cognitive function if they're dropping their cholesterol too much, because the brain, of course, is also made up of fat. And it affects nerve health. So we see an increase in things like peripheral neuropathy, which is that numbness, pain, and tingling that many diabetics suffer with. But we see that increased in people who are using statin drugs. So statins will affect all of those areas, plus, as you mentioned, Doc, the mitochondria. And the mitochondria is where fat and glucose get burned essentially for fuel or cellular energy. And we need cofactors to make those conversions happen. One of them is coenzyme Q10. So a statin drug is basically it blocks the production, blocks an enzyme, which is important for the production of cholesterol in the liver. But that same pathway is also essential to produce coenzyme Q10, and we need that CoQ10 for our mitochondria to function properly. So not to mention cellular health. So the cell membranes are also composed of what's called a lipid bilayer, of fat. So when we interfere with the body's production of what I consider to be an essential nutrient, cholesterol, it's going to have a whole cascade of negative effects, and we see that in clinical practice. Yeah, absolutely. And, we're talking about mitochondria and so cholesterol-lowering medications. They basically poison the mitochondria, and that's where, your body can burn glucose without the mitochondria. Right. But you can't utilize ketones without the mitochondria. Ketones, they go right into the mitochondria, are used up for energy, and produce a rampant amount of cellular energy through the mitochondria. So if you're poisoning your mitochondria, you're really not going to be able to be keto adapted. And so it's going to lead to furthering blood sugar issues and dependency on carbs and sugar and stuff like that. And so I just see so many problems with those types of medications. And in general, I would say, just as a clinician, that very few, if any, people really need to be on cholesterol-lowering medication. What are your thoughts on that? No, I agree. I think, there might be a case for people who have had, a heart attack already or cardiovascular event, and they're, still sort of maybe older middle ages, 40 to 60. There is some evidence there. Of course, I think lifestyle can do a better job, but, statins are somewhat anti-inflammatory and can certainly lower LDL and total cholesterol. How much that really impacts longevity and heart health and cardiovascular health is very debatable. So I would say for almost everyone, there's really no need for a statin. And I think even for the people who seem to benefit from the research from statins, I think lifestyle changes can do a much better job. Yeah, and if people are going to be on statins, they should definitely make sure they're taking coenzyme Q10. You want to support and B12, like you were talking about. You want to really support that mitochondrial cofactors. You want to make sure that you're supporting that. So I think that's super essential. And so what are some other supplements that you like to use? When we're talking about the ketogenic diet, you like using that with your diabetic patients. What are some supplements too that can help them to stabilize their blood sugar and help improve their ability to get into ketosis? Yeah, well, I like carnitine too for fat burning. I think that's really important for a lot of people, especially if they have some mitochondrial issues. Good B vitamin, broad spectrum B vitamins can be important. It provides a lot of those cofactors for the citric acid cycle and all the things that happen there for energy production. I also like chromium for most people. You can test chromium levels through, an intracellular chromium test, but I found that most people with blood sugar issues are either borderline or low in chromium, cellular chromium. So I think some chromium, I like the polynicotinate chromium. I think at least, maybe 400 micrograms of that a day is a good idea for most people with blood sugar metabolism issues. I love alpha lipoic acid or R-lipoic acid. I think those are really important nutrients to protect nerve cells in particular, and liver cells and kidney cells and cardiovascular, the endothelium of the cardiovascular system. I think that's a really important nutrient. I love curcumin, turmeric, or actually taking curcuminoids. I think that reducing inflammation naturally with a spice like that's been used for thousands of years is really important. I love to do that golden milk with some coconut oil or coconut milk, and sometimes I'll use coconut oil or ghee, and then ginger, black pepper, and curcumin or turmeric. That's sort of like one of my go-to health cocktails to reduce inflammation. I try to do a couple of that almost every night. And so I think those are important. I love to try to get things in through food as much as possible, fiber in particular, and some of these other spices. Cayenne pepper can be really good for inflammation and blood sugar health. But sometimes we do need to supplement with nutrients. That's chromium, I think, is a big one. Alpha lipoic acid, as I mentioned, and carnitine, and then the B vitamins, as I mentioned as well. So there's a lot more, but I think that's probably a good start. The last thing I'll mention, last two things, are oils. And so omega-3 support is really important for cellular health and for inflammation. Most people still consume way too many omega-6 fats and not enough omega-3. It's just not very prevalent in the Western diet. So, we have to kind of go out of our way to get more omega-3. And the best source is going to be, those cold water fish and fatty fish. And unfortunately, there's concerns with mercury toxicity and other chemicals. So obviously, we try to do wild-caught fish as much as possible. But, I think that's one that probably should be supplemented so we can get adequate doses of omega-3. And then those short or medium-chain triglycerides for fast-burning fuel like MCT oil, or even coconut oil is great for the brain, great to shift the body into fat burning, ketone production.
Yeah, totally. And so, last question I'm going to ask you is, what are your top 5 foods that people can use to help stabilize their blood sugar and promote this development of ketogenesis and using ketones as fuel? And now you mentioned cold water fish, so I'll count that. You mentioned coconut, kind of getting those MCTs. So what are 3 other great foods?
This one is controversial, but I still love eggs. I think eggs are a great protein source. The egg yolks are just loaded with, again, those B vitamins, choline, lecithin, and other important nutrients that really help. There's some in the vegan camp that would say eggs are the worst thing in the world for somebody with diabetes, but I have just not found that to be true at all. I think eggs are highly beneficial. Any type of fibrous, above ground vegetable is really the go-to food for somebody with blood sugar, I think, blood sugar problems. I think, when you look at, for example, the benefits of a vegan diet and people reversing things like heart disease and diabetes with a vegan diet, all the benefits really come from the vegetables, that they're eating a lot of vegetables. And so you can do that without being a vegan. You can do that on a ketogenic diet. You can do that on a low carb diet, paleo diet. You can eat a lot of vegetables. I think we need to do that. The difference is we recommend adding a lot of fat to those also, things like coconut oil and MCT oils to actually help keep you full and drive the metabolism and help you shift into fat burning mode. So I think green vegetables, and that could be greens, as well as things like broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, even things like squash and zucchini, salad greens, you name it. Any of those above ground fibrous vegetables are really good. And then let me think one more here.
Last one. That's great. Make it count. You've already chosen some great ones. So.
Well, I think I mentioned it before, but I like peppers. I like cayenne pepper, especially for people with circulatory issues and inflammatory issues. I think we want to try to encourage people to do more of that. It's also a vegetable, so I'll try to think of one more as we're talking. But I think people don't eat enough of those, and they can be really beneficial for sort of cooling that internal fire a little bit.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, they are real powerful anti-inflammatories. That's for sure. Yeah. And so, yeah, good. So I was going to add in, how about avocados? Can't go
Oh,
wrong,
yeah.
right?
Good. Well, yeah, any source of good fats,
Yeah,
olives and
exactly.
avocados. That is a good one. I should have said
Yeah,
avocados. That's
absolutely.
one of my favorites. I love avocados.
Oh
I
yeah.
love, I'll mash up avocados with like a little bit of a green banana for the kids, and put a little bit of like some chia seeds, which is another good one. On top of that, and it's a great snack, and I find myself eating a lot of it too. It's
Yeah,
really good for you.
absolutely. I probably eat 2 avocados a day because they're just so versatile. I put them in when I make I make protein pudding. So instead of a protein shake, I typically do a pudding where I've got coconut milk in there and I throw avocado in, and it just makes it really thick along with some healthy
Oh
protein.
yeah, perfect.
Add in, and then my family, we do guacamole like all the time. So we'll do,
Oh yeah.
eggs with guacamole. We'll do, meat dishes with guacamole. If we're doing vegan, we've got guacamole. It's like just a staple right there. You can chop them up, put them on salads. I mean, there's just so many things you can do. And nowadays there's avocado oil, right? And just get avocados in regularly. I think that's a huge.
Yeah. And I love to do like the chopped, julienne vegetables in some avocado or some guacamole. And that's a quick tip for people who love guac and want to go to like their favorite Mexican restaurant. Is that I always ask for the the fajita vegetables like uncooked on the side. They'll give you a big plate of those with the guacamole and skip the chips. It's really good.
Exactly. Yeah,
really
like
good way to
my
do that.
family, we go to Chipotle, which has free range chicken. So they have healthier items, healthier meat products. And we just get double vegetables,
right?
Chicken, and then double guac.
Nice.
So that way it's low carb.
Yeah.
We don't want too much protein, so we don't want to do like double chicken. So one serving of chicken should be totally fine. But then double guac, so we get the extra fat, so we're satiated afterwards.
Sure.
And sometimes we bring our own coconut flour wraps. Have you ever seen those?
I have. Yeah, those are awesome.
Great. Yeah, and so and then we'll just portion it on the coconut flour wrap, and
nice, and
we eat it just like that. It's so good. It's keto. It tastes amazing. So it's another good strategy.
I love it.
Absolutely. So really good stuff. Brian, this has been an amazing interview, and I really appreciate you bringing your expertise on diabetes and really some practical strategies people can apply to start to follow this ketogenic approach, and really giving people hope that diabetes is not a life sentence. I mean, you see in your clinic all the time when people start following these lifestyle strategies, they adopt it. They're able to get off of medications in many cases, and for many of them, in a sense, they've reversed the diabetes, and they're, if you were to look at their fasting blood glucose and all the different measurements, hemoglobin A1C, that they were originally diagnosed with the diabetes to begin with, you would find that they don't have that condition anymore. And so there's definitely hope. And so I just want to thank you for coming on and sharing your expertise in that. And do you have any words of wisdom or any words of hope and empowerment for the people that are listening here as we finish this interview?
Well, I think it would just be that, almost exactly what you said, that there is hope, that even if you've been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, you can still turn it around. And people aren't hearing that from their conventional doctors, unfortunately. They're hearing that there is no cure, which I don't really like that term, but the idea is that diabetes can be turned around and reversed, and you can get control of your blood sugars again. I do this thing called the 8-week blood sugar boot camp, and you've been a guest interview on there as well. And we just actually wrapped up one of the programs, and it's my favorite week because it's like a love fest at the end. We do like a wrap-up call, and I get like a dozen or more people sometimes, waiting in line to come share the results that they're getting. And it's amazing. It like literally, I'm high off of it for weeks because people talk about, how they've been struggling for years and nothing's worked. And they're able to bring their blood sugar back down to near normal. People have lost, in 8 weeks, 20, 30 pounds. And, they've broken through cravings. They don't crave sugar anymore. And, we teach the same principles that you're teaching here on this summit. It's a good low-carb ketogenic style diet, getting the body to burn fat, lowering insulin levels, becoming more insulin sensitive, and then getting the lifestyle under control, sleeping well, handling stress, fixing some of those other issues like gut problems and hormone balance, putting all that together. And the body is an amazing healing being and has this incredible potential for health and healing. And if you do the right things, the body's naturally going to move back towards health. And that's really the miracle.
Yeah, I love it, Dr. Brian. Thank you for giving us that message. And how do people connect with you and learn more about you and the things that you're doing?
Yeah, they can just go to drmoll.com. That's drmowl.com. And that's, of course, that's my website. That's my hub. You can find out about the different programs we do, check out our blog, get on the mailing list for things that we send out. So just go to drmoll.com.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks again for being on, Dr. Moll. And if you, the listener, have gotten value out of this interview and really want to dive deeper in this idea of the ketogenic lifestyle, then I want to encourage you to consider owning the entire Keto Edge Summit for yourself. That way you get all the interviews, lifetime access, can listen to them at any time, the transcripts, all the bonuses that we have, really just a plethora of information and inspiration to help you navigate this journey. And if you do that, we would be super honored. And we would just be blessed if you chose to own this for yourself. So we will see you on a future interview. God bless everybody.